The debut record, 2016, was Carolina Man. So that means you were born and bred in North Carolina, right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
what
I'm
was
a
it like
North
growing
Carolina.
up in that part of the world?
Well, it's a great. The weather's great. I remember thinking when I moved to Nashville, being so surprised at how not great the weather is always. Nashville's weather is can be great, but is very chaotic.
Yeah.
1 minute it'll be storming, the next minute it'll be snowing, the next minute it'll be 103 degrees. But so living in where I lived in North Carolina, in the central part of North Carolina, around the Charlotte area is where I'm actually from. My folks live in a town called Mooresville now, which is where all the NASCAR shops are located. They call it Speed Street, but that's the mountains block all of those weather systems from that are hitting the Midwest and hitting the more central southern parts of the country. It blocks those, so we get this great little pocket of weather in North Carolina where I'm from, and so that's probably the biggest thing I miss is just the weather being great all the time in North Carolina, which is a big part of the reason why. Like I met my wife; she's from Ohio. She loves North Carolina and South Carolina. She grew up going to the beach, Myrtle Beach, where I lived for about 6 years. That's actually where her and I met. And just Carolinas is just a place rooted in good music. I was raised Pentecostal. My dad was a Pentecostal evangelist when I was growing up, and so I grew up singing in church. He would for those who might not know what an evangelist is, it's a traveling preacher. It's a preacher without his own church. So he would go and preach at other people's churches and do revivals. And I would sing before the congregation. And that's kind of what caught me the music bug at an early age. So, man, a lot of my early life was just baseball and gospel music and church and just good times, good memories.
So what, looking back at those times as a youngster, can you kind of put, like, pinpoint or point your finger at that first musical memory that you had? Like
Yeah,
your first inundation to something musical?
absolutely, I can. So I'll give you two that stand out pretty good for me. I remember the first time I sang in front of a church congregation, and I was probably 5 years old, maybe, and I sang "Angels Among Us" by Alabama. And I remember my mom and dad having a conversation in the kitchen about whether the song was gospel enough to play at church,
Mm-hmm.
because Alabama is a country band. And I remember my mom and dad talking. It was like, I don't know. And I don't remember which one it was that was arguing which point or not, but I remember I sang it and everybody loved it. And then I remember I was probably a little bit older at this time, but maybe 10 years old, 10 or 11 years old. And I was singing at a church called Oakdale Church of God, which is right there in Charlotte. And my leg, when I was younger, my leg would shake real bad when I would get on stage. And I mean like noticeably shaking.
Yeah.
And everybody just thought I was like grooving or something. I don't know, but I hit it that I had stage fright. And I got over that stage fright probably when I was an early teenager, and it was just but I remember very vividly the feeling of my leg not stopping shaking, you know. And now everything's just kind of like another day at the office, you know. Pretty nervous about tonight, with this Bluebird debut, but I think I should be all right.
Oh man, it's such a great venue. I've only been there once, but man, like anybody who's played there, and I'm excited for you, man. It's
It's famous, man.
I'd be nervous as hell too.
Yeah.
Angels Among Us, man. The writer of that song has been on the show, Becky
Yeah.
Hobbs.
Very
We've
cool.
actually had the story of how that song came to be on this very show. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that song, and it wasn't meant to be a gospel song originally, and it came from an actual occurrence where she was in a car crash, and she shouldn't have survived it, and that's how that song came to be. Pretty cool
That's
stuff.
incredible.
Yeah. Man, Bluebird, that's something else. And you know, I've known who Trey is for a while. You do have kind of a footprint here in Texas, having been Songwriter of the Year for the Texas Country Music Awards.
Yes, sir.
So how does that happen? Just briefly, we'll go off course just for a minute. How did your Texas footprint kind of come to be?
Well, one of the members of my team, a guy named Dom Sodas, he helps me with my social media, and he's booked some shows for me and stuff. He's from Houston, Texas, so he's always been a really big advocate of getting me into the Texas scene, because I feel like my music is a good mix between Nashville and Texas. You know,
Yeah.
I'm somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean? I definitely have a '90s Nashville kind of throwback sound. So I fit in Texas, and he always wanted me to go down there and play. So I wrote a song called One Tough Job for my dad, because on top of being a Pentecostal evangelist, my dad paid the bills when I was a kid by being a construction worker. He worked as an electrician, and then he got into building commercial playgrounds for schools and parks and libraries and stuff like that. So my dad was always a construction worker when I was growing up. So I wrote this song called One Tough Job for my dad, and we entered it into the TCMA's first song of the year, and it won. That was the only thing I was able to be in, because I think in order to win other things, you have to play a certain amount of your shows in Texas. I have not reached that level to where I'm playing that many shows in Texas yet. Next year, we're going to try to tour a lot, and so hopefully a lot of those shows will be in Texas. So potentially I'll be able to win some more stuff. But it was super awesome. Linda, that is the boss of the TCMA, she's just incredible. She's never been anything but kind and supportive to and sweet to me. All of the Texas artists just kind of, even though I'm from North Carolina, none of them cared. It was like, hey, treated me like one of them. And, the hat and the boots and the buckle has always been my look. As far back as I can remember, all of my heroes were cowboy guys, all of them, George Strait and Garth Brooks and Alan Jackson. And rodeo is a big part of where I grew up. A lot of people don't know that J.B. Mooney, arguably the biggest rodeo cowboy of all time, is like from one town over from where I'm.
Wow. Cool.
He grew up riding at a place called Steagall's, which we went to Steagall's every Sunday. I grew up rodeoing, and I took my son to the rodeo from the time he was a baby. And so that culture has always been a big part of my life. And I just love it, man. I love Texas. I mean, I go down there and I feel like I'm at home. Home away from home, so to speak.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And you're right, man. Linda is very passionate, and she's built
great.
something out of nothing. And then I have a lot of respect for her. And
yeah, she's great.